America. We had a very interesting panel yesterday about what we call subscriber spinning, or how to avoid subscriber spinning. It's our way of describing really churn reduction, a critical element of the industry. It was a very popular panel, and today's panel, when you think about it, it's really intimately connected with that, because what we are going to be discussing today, which as you see there in the presentation, is the pay TV super aggregation phenomenon. The technical name of the discussion today is pay TV operators as super aggregators, keeping the consumer for any content. And really, pay TV super aggregation of OTT services is a strategy that has been designed by the pay TV industry, among other things, to avoid churn, to fight churn reduction. It's not the only motivation. Of course, there's the possibility to increase ARPU, among other things. But that's the sort of discussion that we're going to be having today. So, of course, the concept of aggregation and pay TV is new. It's not new at all. Pay TV operators were born as aggregators of television content. Only in the beginning, it was really always linear TV channels that was being aggregated. These days, it's a different situation, and the variety of content coming from the OTT side that is at the disposal of pay TV operators is enormous. And you're talking about SVOD services, AVOD, so really also OTT supported by advertising revenue modules. You have the D2C OTTs being launched by the media groups. You have sports linear OTT channels. You have the pay-per-view OTT, individual events like concerts, and the list is unending, really. So there's this explosion of OTT services that suddenly operators can start integrating into their ecosystem. And I'm going to introduce now the four experts that we have, and will help us understand what the situation is looking like, particularly in Latin America, and even more particularly in the Caribbean and Central America. You will see there's a strong Caribbean and Central American flavor from our panelists coming in. So I'll start with the ladies. And we have in the first place, Diane Bison. Diane is responsible for content acquisition and development at Cable Bahamas. She's based out of Miami, Florida in the States. Cable Bahamas, of course, one of the big providers of not only pay TV, internet, and voice services there in the Bahamas. Interestingly, Diane she also represents the Belize Cable Television Operators Association. So a lot of experience, again, coming from her, particularly centered around the Caribbean and Central America. Monica Gonzalez Piris is the head of content acquisition of Digital Group. She's also based out of Miami, Florida. I don't think I need to say a lot about Digital Group, really one of the largest telecom operators across Latin America. It's an international telecoms operator. It's present in, I think it's 32, she will correct me if that's not the up-to-date number, 32 countries in the Caribbean, Central America, and Asia Pacific, and over 40 million people using those services. Greg Riker is the Senior VP of Sales for the Americas of Metrological. Metrological is a Comcast company, and Metrological is also the official sponsor of this panel. Metrological, it's really a technology company. It was founded in 2005 in the Netherlands, based in the Netherlands, with offices in the States and in Europe. And really, if we have to summarize what Metrological does in a few words, it's a company that helps operators integrate their TV and OTT content into a unified TV viewing experience. Greg will be able to explain that in more detail. Last but not least, we have Jordan Warkle. Jordan is the Director of Business Development of Toon Goggles. He's based out of LA, California, and Greg is based in Denver, Colorado. I would like to say where everybody's joining us from. Jordan in LA, California, and Toon Goggles. I'm sure also some of you will be familiar with this OTT. Jordan will be the OTT representative in this discussion. And it's an OTT that is specialized in children's content. So that's for the introductions. Just before we start with the discussion, a reminder that you can send our panelists any questions through the tool. We'll make a selection of those questions at the end, and will let us know if the question is addressed to any panelist in particular, and we'll take them at the beginning of the session. It's a 1-hour session, and we'd like to start and stop on time. Okay, so let's start with our two representatives from the pay TV operators. And I think it's fair to say, Diane and Monica, that even though this situation exists and we have this explosion of OTT services, in Latin America, it's still a market that it's beginning to gain some traction. And you see, first, not all operators are integrating, but even for those who are, it's a very slow process, and usually you see them integrating 1 or 2 OTT services. Is that how you see it as well, and why do you think that is? And let me start with that question to Diane.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me, Sylvia and Juan Pablo. Yeah, I think part of this is divided into two. I think part's technology and part of it is also the rights of these OTT apps that our customers definitely want. They want them. They want to see. We're more aligned with what happens in the U.S., and so they like to see the popular ones. And there are many out there that are really niche. And I think, you know, for our markets, particularly so in the Caribbean, we're starting to integrate more. But it also gives us an opportunity to create our own and to have some USP, some unique selling points to that, and how we can target our own customer base and match their needs and their tastes. So I think without the rights being there, it makes it a little bit more difficult for us to do more integration. So I don't know, Monica, and I'll leave Greg too as well for the technology piece of this.
Just quickly, when you say without the rights, I think it's interesting to expand a few seconds on that concept.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick one, for example, Disney Plus. They've not begun to launch in our region, and when they do, they're going to do D2C before they even come to us, right? So part of what they tell us, either it's a technology thing, we can't do it with you guys, or we don't have the rights for all the content that they would have had for the US market for our region.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Monica, do you agree with this view?
I actually do, 110%. So piggyback off of what Diane said, our region is extremely unique. We fall to certain aspects in Latin America as a rights perspective, but then also within this US blurred line territory, right? So some of our customers expect that US facing programming and channels, and then they end up with a division. They get the Latin American feeds in English with the Spanish commercials or vice versa. The same experience is happening with the OTTs. Therefore, we usually have to wait for the LATAM launch in order for it to enter into our markets, but they're already exposed to all of it via the United States. Having said that, from a rights perspective, that is an issue, but also technology is an issue. Our Our set-top boxes, to some extent, can be archaic at certain moments, and for that reason, we cannot do the integrations that are required. So we also have to allow for the evolution of the set-top boxes in our markets in order for these integrations to occur. And also, even by the OTTs positioning, they aren't able to integrate for whatever reason into some of our set-top boxes or our mobile devices or what have you. So it's a twofold approach from a technological aspect.
I think, Greg, you're early on in the call, you are required, your expertise is required, because the technology barriers is, we can see it is an issue. It seems to me we have these two worlds, the OTTs on the one side, really the set-top boxes of the operators on the other. Yep. There's a multitude on both sides. Does that create technical difficulties?
Well, and I think you add in middleware into all of this as well. So you've got a whole bunch of things that you need to manage and kind of figure out how to integrate to this. And I would say, in the past, really just meaning, over the last year or two or whatever, it has been extremely complicated to integrate some of these applications into the devices in the Latin America and the Caribbean, and for lots of different reasons. But sometimes it's performance of device, sometimes it's uniqueness of the middleware. But most of the OTT guys, their original development strategy really came off of the web, right? So they build their apps, and they have their DNA about building things that work on high-powered PCs and want the fancy graphics and want all the control and need all of these things that you easily get when you develop an application on on essentially a PC. When you get into an embedded environment, that all goes out the window, because now you're competing against lots of other things on that set-top box that needs, whether it's memory, storage, processing, all of those type of things. So that transition from we can just build this on a PC and port it over to a set-top box and everything is going to work. Is a painful learning situation for the industry, to be honest with you. You've got Netflix that's got a certain requirement in terms of how they want their app local on the box and all of basically the master, if you will. And then you've got you've got some other applications out there that are trying to make it a little bit easier so they can get onto the footprint. What I think you've seen, and that was kind of the early days or the original, right? And we can take that as far back as you want up until year and a half, 2 years ago. There's a massive evolution right now going on in terms of making things a lot simpler and making things where you can go lower level into the set-top box, whether that's through a bunch of open source contributions into the community. Metrological's done that with an SDK called Lightning, which really allows you to have very good and interesting content that you would normally have as a native app. Now it's a cloud-based app. And that's a lot of the reasons why Comcast has come in and actually acquired Metrological, because they see us as a technology partner that is solving the problems of the set-top box and the smart TV, and not necessarily trying to push something onto something else, right? It really is a technical evolution, if you will. So is it here now? Slowly. I think, part of the things, we've got commitments from major premium OTT players that are moving their architecture and solution to this open sourced Lightning based application. And honestly, the catalyst was they have to do it if they want to get onto Comcast. So that makes it a little bit easier, right? When you've got a hammer to throw. But that's going to be a really good thing for the market, because now the market can adopt to that and take advantage of all of that as well. So I do think from a technical standpoint, in the regions that we're talking about, specifically Caribbean and Latin America, the technology challenges are going to slowly go away, and not necessarily with a refresh of devices, but actually be able to leverage the current investment on devices. So I think that layer, we can actively say we have a way to deal with that today. I do think and what we had talked about earlier with Diane, in terms of you still have the issue of carriage and distribution, right? And it's been a real priority issue when you start talk to the content providers, right? They're looking at, gaining the most subscribers in the, as quickly as possible. So a lot of these smaller regions that don't aggregate a lot of subscribers kind of fall down in the priority list a little bit. I do think that with what we're doing at Metrological, being able to aggregate a bunch of these subscribers, the maintenance and operations of this can go across operator and across country and really across the world will make them more interested in coming into these smaller regions. So, and faster, because it was all about, it takes resources on their side, just as it takes resources on the CSP and the MVP side. And I think growth will start to happen much, much faster.
Okay. Jordan, just taking it another minute on the technical side, I think it would be interesting to hear your voice, because when especially Greg was describing how some of the OTT companies were born, I think it applies to your example that Toon Goggles, if I'm not mistaken, was born as an internet HTML-based platform, if you want, and gradually started to be compatible with other devices and ecosystems. So does some of the things that have been discussed in terms of the technical issues, you see them also applying to your example?
Yeah, I mean, for us, and thanks for having me here as well. For us, we started as an initial website in 2011, and since the rise of tablets and then connected TVs, we've always been focused at transitioning to being on every connected device we could. And for us, it was, if there was a technical challenge of trying to be on a new device, on a new platform, if we saw a big value that would open us up to a larger distribution, we would really focus on whatever we had to do to make sure we can get on that platform. And I think when you're a smaller OTT service or you're newer, and you have less resources, you have to really cater to where the value is and the distribution is, because the larger distribution, that'll lead you to, to growing revenues quicker and users that allow you to then have more resources to launch on smaller platforms that may not have that for you right away. So I think you just kind of have to really go where the value is and where you have the resources too.
So what I'd like to focus on the value that you're saying. What is really the motivation when an OTT decides to be super aggregated, let's call it, to be aggregated by others, and particularly the pay TV operators? What's in it for the OTT? Is it just the case that increased distribution opens the window for increased advertising revenues? Is it perhaps, does it have to do with the fact that the subscriber might have a clearer billing system with the structure that comes from the pay TV operator? What's the motivation to go this way and to be integrated?
I think it's both what you're saying, and it just really depends on your strategy as a company. So though we do have an SVOD option, our clear focus and growth point right now is on the AVOD side. And being a worldwide service that's available everywhere, our focus has always been to be as widely distributed as we can and having deep partnerships that kind of tailor to the company. So whether it's offering extended free trials with some companies that they can give to their subscribers, or in most cases, just trying to expand our viewership and user base to where we then have a growing demand for advertising that then lets us go into markets like right now, like Brazil and Latin America, where we've had a growing viewership for several years. And now that the AVOD side of the business is growing really rapidly out there, we can now focus those efforts. And along with that, I think it's really trying to tailor an experience that is for each market. So soon for Toon Goggles, we're going to be launching more localized channels within our service that is in Brazilian Portuguese, that is in Latin American Spanish. And I think that gives the end user a much better experience. And that lets you work with either pay TV operators or smart TV operators in those regions to provide a unique experience versus just taking our content library that is in North America and love there and just using that same experience everywhere. It's trying to offer a unique experience every region we can and grow it more specifically there and work with every partner along the way as well.
Diane, when you do decide to go ahead and start integrating an OTT platform, how does that affect the monetization strategy of a pay TV operator?
Yeah, Juan Pablo, if I may, can I ask the
Sure.
panel a couple questions? One to Greg and one to before we get
you
to
can.
Greg, and I don't, and Monica, maybe that you have this experience as well. We have set-top boxes that are archaic to, you know, a wide range, and there may be anywhere from 8 to 10 different set-top boxes in the market. Do you have anything that could really, I mean, what's the process to put an app on all these set-top boxes? Because some of them are probably just, it's not going to work.
Diane, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there was a question about that regarding a solution that Sandeep mentioned. So I don't know if they want to address the question. But
okay.
Yeah.
No, sorry. But let's take the question now. I think it is a relevant question. It was going to come up sooner or later. So let's address it
Sorry,
straight
I'm out of order.
No, that's fine.
No.
That's a fun one for me to answer. So the quick answer is it depends, and the other answer is most likely. And what I mean by that is, you know, looking at your region, I have seen things that you know, probably should not be still deployed. But there, you know, maybe there's this really small sliver of old, you know, devices that are out there that are just kind of, you can turn them on and you're good to go. But what we've been able to do is we have a cloud-based solution that just simply requires the set-top box to have access and be able to launch a URL, and then that can bring an entire OTT experience into the device. So you know, we've done this you know, multiple times with some of your competitors, and working with one of them right now. And this is great. This is actually another thing for some of the bigger operators too. They're dealing with a lot of the same things, right? They've got millions and millions and millions of dollars invested in what we call legacy set-top boxes, and they just can't afford to churn those boxes out and replace them. You know, Claro is a perfect example for us. It's 6 million plus legacy boxes, and they want to have an OTT solution for those customers. So it really is putting an architecture together that allows you to service those customers along with servicing your you know, your higher end devices. So when I said there's an evolution, I think that's part of the evolution, that there are ways to do it. I think more importantly, the content providers now are adopting and accepting some of that. You know, just maybe a year or 2 years ago, they're all very specific on how you do the integration, what kind of box it had to be on, you know, the performance of that device, you know, going through all of this quality assurance with them to make sure they're getting the experience that their customers expect. With this technology over the last year or so has really elevated that ability to get a cloud-based application look very much like and even better sometimes, a native-based app. So there's solutions out there for you now, and it's really interesting and really fun to see.
Monica, you wanted to comment on that as well?
Actually, I didn't really want to comment on that.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. It's just that Diane addressed the question to you and Greg. That's I wanted to give you the chance to comment. Yeah. But I have a question nonetheless for you, Monica, and that is, what do you feel is better when it comes to integrating this additional content, to go for a third-party OTT app, or just to integrate content into your own VOD platform? Or is it just a question of one or the other, or both can be combined? What's your feeling in terms of that?
Yeah, so, well, in short, it's both, right? Mm-hmm. So at Digicel, what we would like to do and what we always put at our forefront is our customer and what they want and what they need. So whatever it takes to achieve that and to fulfill whatever they want from their viewing experience, that's what we do. So we do have, you know, parallel roadmaps and strategies for internal use as well as third-party OTTs. We focus on complementing the third-party OTTs. We don't try to compete with them. And so we have unique positioning with our own apps as well as the third party. So we see it in a very holistic picture.
Okay. Diane, I want to go back to the question I was referring earlier on in terms of the monetization strategy. Do you feel that this sudden integration, whether it happens now or once these sort of integration technical challenges start to be ironed out, do you feel that your traditional monetization approach should change to reflect that integration? That's not necessarily the case. Does it expand the monetization options? Does it make them more complex?
Yeah, no, I think there's a hybrid there somewhere with what we have existing, and as we transition into look into other revenue streams, I think that's what we're looking at. A lot of AVOD is kind of where our roadmap is headed right now. I think the SVOD, we have SVOD, and we don't really do TVOD, although we have the ability to do it, but we are looking at other ways to monetize and really extend the utility of the product.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, staying on monetization, do you want to let us know how what works best for you and what do you see working best? I guess in your case, it's more towards the advertising side of the monetization options.
Yeah, for us, it's definitely the AVON model. We were probably one of the earliest services to have an AVON model. Many years ago, we started with that, and we've always had an SVOD option for the few parents that do want to remove ads. But from what we've seen, outside of kids themselves not having credit cards, parents just don't want to keep paying for something else for their kids when they likely already have some kids content offering in the services they pay for. And I think if you focus on your ad technology and providing a seamless experience with focus on ad sales, have a variety of ads that are appropriate and enjoyable, then I think that is the best experience. And I think there is a lot of SVOD fatigue right now, not just with all the recent launches of the new larger players. I don't think there's enough room for people to want to lose cable and now have 6 SVOD services. So I think, at least for me, I really just go to specific content and very rarely like an entire service. And I think a lot of people are like that. So, I think the AVON model allows people to really just, watch a few shows on any service, see ads, and they don't mind, and then continue to, enjoy content that way. And I think that seems like the growing model, and the ad technology is definitely moving that direction. And I think that's where more smaller niche services can really grow quicker.
Greg, I think it's interesting to hear from you in terms of the monetization debate, because you're able to glean from your experience working not only in this region, but in other areas of the world as well. What's your take on how monetization models have been evolving in recent years?
Yeah, well, they're evolving. I'm not sure if they're evolving very, very quickly, right? I think one of the strategies that we've kind of looked at is, monetization. It's a very simple factor to the number of eyeballs you have access to, right? Which drives the value of that subscriber, which drives the value of the CPM. It drives all of the things that advertisers want to spend money on. And when you're going in an AVOD solution, you got to have at least a population of customers in order to gain any kind of monetization against that subscriber base. One of our strategies has been, and this from the very beginning, even pre Comcast, is we're able to aggregate a bunch of subscribers and then share that ability to monetize across all of those subscribers. So we're offering up 120 million plus subscribers to an advertiser and to a CSP, content service provider. That really kind of changes the game a little bit. So instead of targeting maybe 2,000 subscribers on an island in the middle of the Caribbean, the advertiser has access to a much larger population of eyeballs to go after. Now that's also gives the advertiser a way to do some very specific targeting based on the region itself, but it also allows them to get some a much broader way of getting a global advertising strategy in place. So we're seeing a lot of that, and whether that's through MVPD consolidation, right? With Altice again picking up a couple of operators this week, and Comcast picking up Sky, but also on the content side with, the many consolidations that are happening on the content. Everyone's trying to get bigger and able to monetize a little bit better. Our philosophy and our strategy has always been, if we can offer up a huge population of eyeballs, that will drive the money. That will also allow us to share all of that as across the entire ecosystem. And I think that's happening. It's not happening fast enough, but we're definitely seeing it happening. We expect to see a significant amount of revenue being driven through AVOD services on the Metrological network by the end of next year. We've got a very big budget for that, hundreds of millions of dollars. So,
okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, I see we are receiving some questions from the audience, so that's good. We're going to take them in the last 10 or 15 minutes of the session. And if you have some more questions, feel free to send them to us now. I have another question for our pay TV operators, because really when we talk about pay TV super aggregation, the pay TV operators are not the only actors in this ecosystem who can suddenly super aggregate it, right? You have even some device manufacturers like the smart TVs, the streaming media players that are doing essentially the same thing. So, Monica, when you think of a smart TV that is integrating, also super aggregating, do you think of that smart TV manufacturer as a competitor or not necessarily? Is there a competition and there's going to be a winner? How do you see a smart TV manufacturer doing super aggregation?
Yes. So what we focus on is our relationship with our customers and what they need. And that direct to consumer relationship is pivotal in our strategy and in our focus. So yes, there exist the Apples, the Googles of the world, etc. But we believe that because of our relationship, because we understand our customers and we exactly know what they want, what they view, and what they need, they would stay with us.
Diane, it's the same question to you.
No, Monica is exactly right. It's exactly the same focus and strategy we use. Although I think we've found when most of these TV sets are imported down to the islands, right, or in the region, that sometimes the customer will get to the app and then it'll just say, you're not allowed to watch because there's no rights there. So we've had that experience as well. But I think we don't find a lot of TV sets, I don't know about you, Monica, where we've had customers say they actually watch the content that's already embedded.
Monica, do you want to?
Yeah, well, the smart TV penetration is not that high in our markets to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So that's a fairly low bar. Having said that, maybe they have access via different manners, but I would say from a legal aspect, the answer is no. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, I think it's interesting to hear from your side of the story. I understand you are being sort of in some cases pre-installed with some of the smart TV manufacturers. So it would be interesting to hear how that process works. What's the negotiation like when you're about to be integrated with a smart TV? Do you need to negotiate by territory, by country? How does that process work?
So I can give some details on that. And I think, it really depends on first, if your service and depending on how much content you have and where those rights are. So for us, we have a lot of worldwide rights for our content. So with, companies like Sony or Hisense, and TCL, we are pre-installed on those devices already. And, I think a value that you have to continually provide when you're doing this kind of relationships, it's not necessarily in the contract, but it's just ensuring that you continue to provide value to their customers by either offering extended free trials, which we often do, seasonal holiday promotions that are centered around specific content or, created channels. and how we said now that we're going to be launching localized content for different regions. So we just try to offer really specialized experiences for each partner for what they're looking for throughout the year. And that retains the value that we have for them. And then that goes down for their customers. You know, as far as the negotiations, it's always very different for each partner. And, you know, that depends on the service and, you know, who's in charge of making those deals at that time. But I think the main thing to focus on is you want to be as widely distributed as you can as a smaller service. And, you know, oftentimes for us on multiple smart TV platforms, we have multiple touch points where a user can discover us. So we're offering a standalone application on every smart TV, but then we're also a channel available on Zumo. We're also, you know, a linear channel on Vizio Smartcast and other platforms. So for us, if they don't find our standalone application, they might find us on Zumo if that's their platform of choice. So I think there are a lot of options for smaller services or newer services to be discovered in multiple ways. And I think it doesn't cannibalize your service. It just gives more discoverability and more ways to grow viewership. And I think, you know, that's the way that a certain OTT service can, you know, can approach things.
Can I add one more thing to that, especially for the Bahamas, which is obviously a big tourism market, and many of our hotels that we already have agreements in with they've launched their own app in some hotels that say, you know, the tourists can bring their own service down. However, when you get there, it still doesn't work just because, again, it's a rights issues. But we're seeing even in smart TVs, the point there's smart TVs, even in the hotels are embedding their own apps as well.
Good point. And Greg, Jordan was just mentioning the word discoverability, and I wanted, that's a critical issue, isn't it? I mean, you have on this side this explosion of increasing services coming from different sources. At the end of the day, if the user is not able to quickly find what they are looking for, it becomes a mess, a waste of resources in so many ways. Are there technical tools to facilitate that sort of content discovery process?
There is actually. So that leads me into a sales pitch, but I won't go there. That really is a value of kind of these app aggregators, right? They could go and negotiate the rights for the metadata, you know, and bring that as part of the service. And from that standpoint, you integrate it into the operator's experience, right? Whether it's their voice remote experience, their search and rec experience, you know, whatever that happens to be. But it's really about the metadata itself, right? You need to have a good, robust repository of that. And you know, for a lot of people, it's really hard to get all of that metadata. You know, you might be able to negotiate rights for 1 or 2 or 3 app providers, but you might have 20, 30, 40, 100 different apps. So that kind of lends itself where it's really overwhelming for most MVPDs to be able to go off and kind of do all of this by themselves. A lot of them try, and then they figure out how complicated it is, and then they've got to come back and kind of figure out what's the next best solution on that. And I think you've hit it right on the head. Integrating the OTT video experience with your traditional live linear experience is very, very important, right? I mean, it is for monetization, it is for consumer adoption, it is for lots of different things, but you need to have that tightly integrated into your accepted user experience, the one that the consumers are used to. You need to have the expectations of what they're getting met, right? In terms of, I'm going to search for a Born Identity movie, and it's, you know, there might be in 3 different places. It might be on linear, it might be on VOD, it might be on some 2 different OTT apps, but you've got to be able to surface that content in a way to do that. And that's all about metadata management and aggregation of these things. But lots of tools are out there that makes that available. It's, you know, it's not the easiest thing to do in the world. Using companies like Metrological make it much easier. But you know, every deal that I'm involved in, whether it's with the CSP or with a MVPD, that is one of the number one requirements, is integration into discovery, and whatever that discovery is, voice, search and rec, you know, whatever.
And Monica, as an operator, do you agree that that's a key requirement for you as you start incorporating additional sources of content? Do you feel that's coming as a request from your subscriber base as well?
I don't know if the request is that strong at this moment. However, I definitely think that that would be our future. I do believe in a unified integration. I do believe that metadata is pivotal, and having that intelligence within the platform is pivotal. So as far as the linear experience, I do think that people will still enjoy having the linear experience, but I do think that they will also revert back to the OTTs of the world and things like that. So the metadata and that strength is very important within any platform.
Okay. Diane, I want to touch specifically with you on an issue, which is how the piracy element plays in this whole discussion. I guess you have some interesting comments to make on that. So that's really an issue that we can never escape from. What's your take on piracy and this discussion?
Yeah, I think the proximity for Bahamas in particular to the US, piracy is a challenge for us because it's easier. One, they're seeing US content that they want and they can't get because rights are not available, right? But then also because it's only a half an hour plane ride away from each other, it's easy for them to pirate the content of the US, and whether I mean, jailbreaking Fire Sticks and things like that are a big issue for us. And once that's jailbreak, they get everything. Then if they're getting it, they're not going to pay for it, right? So that's one thing we're looking at and trying to work with our regulator in particular to control.
Okay. It was a brief question, but I thought it was important. We are approaching our last 15 minutes, and there are some questions coming up. So before I go to the questions, I just, Monica already mentioned something when she is envisioning what's coming up in terms of the future. I'd like to ask each of you a brief comment in terms of how you see this future of the pay TV business evolving. We all notice there are things happening and happening fast. I mentioned we had a panel yesterday about subscriber churn. That's a reality for the pay TV world these days. But at the same time, I think we can see from this conversation that there are new opportunities coming up. So I'd like you to do a quick roundup in terms of how do you see the pay TV business in the next few years. And I'll start with Greg, if I may, and then I'll ask each of you to give me a few words.
Well, shoot, I wasn't raising my hand. I was turning my mic off. Darn it! I like to go last on that thing.
You can go last.
Especially I'm sporting my my COVID look today. So where do we see the future going? I think you see this pendulum, right? You see the consumers really are trying to drive. They want all this control. They want all this control, and that's where you saw a lot of the subscription-based services come in. Semi-aggregators, Netflix and the Amazons and the Slings and whoever, Fuboos and all those out there. And I think Jordan had mentioned earlier, there's a lot of this subscription fatigue that's going on right now, right? And it's hard for consumers to manage all of their subscriptions. It's costly if you start thinking about it. People are tuning into TV shows or movies more than necessarily brand is what we're seeing, right? So maybe I want to see Game of Thrones, but I'm not watching anything else on that particular networks that's driving Game of Thrones. So there's that kind of things is starting to drive churn, and you see Disney announcing that they're going to lose subscribers because of the free stuff. That there's a bunch of these things that are happening. What I think that the idea of the super aggregator is never going to go away, and the reason for that is cost of content and the ability to be able to spread the cost of all of that content across multiple subscribers works. It's always worked. It's still going to work until content and distribution kind of figure out a way to align themselves in terms of total cost structure. So, the future of TV, me personally, we see the deep integration of over-the-top applications looks just like a traditional video service, traditional TV service with, again, the content is going to be the driver for all of the, what people are going to watch and when they're going to watch it. And I think bundles are going to be important with, ESPN, Hulu, Disney, those type of bundles. You're going to get some other players come in with, whether it's T-Mobile and Sprint and, bundling up with a bunch of the HBOs and those type of things. I think it's just going to be a churn world, right? I think, people you're going to have the customers that are okay with this super aggregator approach, and I'm going to pay for a bundle. I'm going to be excited about it. Then you're going to have some of these other customers that are just going to churn on content. Is that going to eventually kind of intersect? Probably, but I don't see that happening in the next 2 years or so. There's too much turnover on services and customer behavior and all of this, but it will smooth back down. We're going to go from this pendulum back over here, and I've never seen it stop in the middle. So,
Jordan, a few words, and do you agree with some of those things? Do you have a different uptake?
No, I definitely agree with a lot of things that Greg said, and I think the AVOD business is going to continue to grow with the rise and growth of these virtual MVPDs like the Samsung TV Pluses, the Roku channels. I think consumer adoption is really taking to those. And I think it really caters to the type of experience and the time that somebody has at that moment. If somebody just has a quick 20, 30 minutes and they don't want to spend 40 minutes scrolling through Netflix to find what movie they want that night, that approach gives them premium content, a lot of channels that they can just find laid back in that time that they have, and it's still quality content. And as more premium channels that have content that people love launch on these platforms, I think that's going to continue the adoption. But the OTT side will still continue to be there. And I think the hybrid models with the AVOD, SVOD mix, I think is a big help. I think we saw with some services like how Quibi launched this year and the consumer response there isn't an instant need for every new SVOD service just because the company tells you that it's different and unique. I think that was a good example that a lot of money was spent and there is some quality shows, but people aren't flocking to it. I think it's very difficult that there's only room for a select few premium players that people are willing to spend $8+ a month for. And then people will spend much more in their time to watch content that they want in the time they have.
Very interesting. Diane, when you think of the next, I don't want to say 5 years, that seems like, especially in these times, unthinkable. Just one, 2, 3 years time frame. How do you see this, your sector evolving? You're muted, Diane.
Yeah, sorry. I agree with both Jordan and Greg. What's old will be new again, and it'll come full circle. I think, like Jordan, we're kind of focused now on the AVOD model, on getting that out, and it's just going to continue. And Jordan brings up a good point and a good reference point there with Quibi and how that's been marketed. And I think customers now, some of them have ADD, so like he said, you don't want to spend 40 minutes looking for something that you could watch in like 10-15 minutes. So apart from given all the other busy things that they have going on in their life, but I think those two gentlemen are right on point.
And Monica, you already mentioned the growing importance that you can imagine in terms of service discovery. A few other highlights that you can think of for the future?
Yeah, so just a couple of highlights. I don't think anybody addressed the traditional cable packaging here because we're more focused on OTT. But just from a pay TV operator standpoint, I think that will dwindle. That'll become more of the mini basics with the bundles and things like that. Also representing the broadband and the mobile component that Digicel has, I think that the OTT partnerships with that. So having the bundling capability of the OTTs with these mini basics, free to airs, which are extremely important in our markets, is the way of the future.
Okay,
thank you.
Good. So we have time for a few questions that are coming in. There's one from Frederick Grohl-Burrell. He says, hello everyone, my question is for both Diane and Monica. Considering the current pandemic and effects, has your respective content aggregation strategies changed? And if so, how? So how has the pandemic affected your content aggregation strategy, if any, if it has made any changes? Let's start with Diane.
Yeah, it's definitely changed. I think we have a really good analytic system. So what we've actually taken a look at is, you know, who's watching what, and then what are the top, you know, 10 programs by channel, and then, you know, made a decision whether we're going to keep it or not, or going forward, or what the trends are in the market, or what our customers are saying. If there's a way to go out and buy a specific program versus, you know, carrying a whole channel and, you know, for 36 months or however long the agreement is, that's kind of the model we're kind of adopting because of COVID, you know, because while people are home, they're switching more. They're switching channels more often. They're switching their OTTs, their apps, you know, everything else. So we've had some good insights onto what are the specific programs that they're watching by channel and how many hours they're spending per day. And that's really informed our decision-making process and aggregating content.
Very interesting. Monica, how about you?
Our strategy, much like Diane's, is about optimization of our content, right? We have a very diverse portfolio. So we continue to optimize, to renegotiate, et cetera. I don't think COVID has changed us in that way. We've always have looked at our analytics, and we've always optimized our content and try to give our consumers what they would like. Obviously, with the COVID impact, that has reflected on our revenue streams, et cetera. So we have had to reanalyze our positioning to some extent. But as far as the optimization and our content strategy, it remains the same.
Okay. We have also a question from Sandeep Jinsi. I'm not sure it's a question or a comment, but Sandeep says, when we were at the beginning of the conversation discussing about some of the technical challenges, and Sandeep says, to overcome some of the technical issues related to legacy set-tops, as mentioned by Monica, an option is to integrate the OTT on the online platform that several operators offer. And he says then, and offer deep linking to enable universal search and recommendation across all the services of this online platform: linear TV, VOD, and OTT. So again, I think it's more comments. I don't know, Greg, if you have any words to.
No, I think that's right. I mean, that was kind of what we had talked about early on the integration challenges. But yeah, it's you know, the goal is to remove as much dependency on the device as you can, and service this, or and create these services that can be managed and delivered by the cloud. That allows you to go further down into the age of the device and do things differently. And then you're also aggregating a bunch of these services to get into, again, universal search and rec and those type of things. So I mean, I think that comment is exactly where the industry's at.
Okay, and we have one final question from Gilberto Balinge, or Balinge. How do the operators, so again, a question addressed to the operators, how do the operators currently use data to determine their content or channel for their linear TV strategy? So how do you use data to determine your content or linear TV strategy? Monica or Diane?
Yeah, I'll take that first. Poor Diane.
Okay.
So we use the data in order to drive our acquisition and our strategy, and then further develop and enhance that. So I think it's pivotal to any person within the content acquisition team or programming teams to study these, right? I wouldn't say it's limited to linear, in fairness. I think on demand or anywhere we can see any type of viewership or behavior, or even within the ecosystem of the platform, if you can tell how they're navigating through it. So any type of data that informs us more of what the consumer is doing and watching, and that behavior is important to our decision making.
Perfect. Diane?
No, she's right on. That's exactly what we do. So
Okay.
I think I alluded some parts of it before in the previous question.
Jordan, I think I see you raising your hand. You have a comment on that as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think in addition to operators, I think we as an OTT service employ a lot of the same strategies in case there's someone in the audience that has their own service. That I think it's very important to, for us, we are more of a premium offering and curated to where, we have a few hundred shows, and, we don't want to have an offering, especially when dealing with kids, that they're searching endlessly for something they like. And we see that's, typically not what they do. They're not like me and my wife spending an hour on Netflix trying to find something. Sometimes kids find a character they like and they'll start watching. So I think it's really important to stay attuned to how your users are looking for content, how far they're going in your category rows, and really, adjusting the kind of, the categories you have to more contextually see what they like, and really be agile in adjusting that strategy and being open to being surprised by something that maybe you thought that they like less than you thought, or the opposite. And I think it's along the same lines as an operator. We have to run ourselves, and we do, as a network, and we treat our linear channels as networks, and the way that we program them and schedule them, and the way we make our changes as well. And I think having that approach from the OTT perspective as running your own network is really important.
Okay. Well, we are now approaching the end of the discussion. I think it's been very interesting. I want to thank especially each of our panelists. I want to thank our audience. I want to thank Metrological as the sponsor of the discussion. And I want to remind you that this panel has been recorded and will be available online on the Dataxis website. So if any of you want to review what's been discussed, starting from tomorrow, it will be available on a VOD fashion, just to stay in line with the VOD discussion that we had today. Thank you very much to everyone, and especially again to our panelists, and have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.